A drop of water, innocent, clear, life-giving, or so they thought. August 31st, 1854. In the heart of London, in the narrow streets of Soho, a baby died. Nobody cared. After all, this was Victorian London. Babies died every day. But within 3 days, 127 more people on the same street would be dead. The killer wasn't a person. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't anything you could see. The killer was a pump, and no one would figure it out. No one except one man. The year is 1854. The world looked at London with wonder. Capital of the Industrial Revolution. Heart of the empire. The most powerful city on earth. But behind this magnificent facade was another London. A dark, filthy, and deadly London. The city's population had surpassed 2.5 million, and the infrastructure couldn't handle it. The Soho neighborhood was the most striking example. Narrow streets, windows so close they nearly touched. Sometimes 10 people lived in a single room, and in the middle of the streets, open sewers flowed freely. Imagine the smell: rotting vegetables, human waste, animal carcasses, all mixed together, boiling in the summer heat. The stench was so powerful that the wealthy couldn't step outside without soaking their handkerchiefs in perfume. But Soho's poor couldn't afford perfume. They just tried to breathe. So why did people continue living in this filth? Simple answer: they didn't know any better. In the mid-19th century, the medical world was governed by one belief: the miasma theory. According to this theory, diseases came from bad air. Yes, you heard that right. Bad smells poisoned the air. Poisoned air entered the lungs, and it killed people. It seemed logical, didn't it? After all, the filthiest neighborhoods produced the most patients. But because of this belief, no one could see the real culprit. All of London's sewage flowed directly into the Thames, and people drew their drinking water from the same river. So everyone was afraid of the air. But the real killer was in the water they drank every day. Broad Street sat at the heart of Soho, and in the middle of this street stood a pump. The locals loved this pump. The sweetest water in London, they called it. Clear, refreshing, delicious. Every morning, women would queue to fill their buckets. Tea was brewed with this water. Babies were fed with this water. The sick were nursed back to health with this water. No one had ever bothered to look beneath the pump. No one knew what lay just 1 meter away. Because down there, London's sweetest water was about to become London's deadliest poison. And it would all start with a single baby. 40 Broad Street, home of the Lewis family. In the final days of August 1854, a baby named Francis lived in this house. Baby Francis was ill. Severe diarrhea, vomiting, fever. Her mother didn't know what to do. She couldn't afford a doctor. She couldn't buy medicine. All she could do was wash the baby's soiled diapers. And she carried those diapers down to the basement. There was an old cesspit there. The mother threw the diapers into that pit. A routine action, a logical action. But that cesspit was only 1 meter from the Broad Street pump's well, and the brick walls were cracked. Baby Francis's diarrhea, drop by drop, began seeping into London's sweetest water. August 31st, 1854. Baby Francis died. No one mourned too deeply. After all, this was London. Babies died every day. But that night, strange things began happening on Broad Street. First came the sounds: moaning, screaming, crying, from one house, then 2, then 5, then 10. People were falling ill all at once. The symptoms were horrific. First came violent vomiting, then diarrhea. Unstoppable, watery, almost white diarrhea. Cramps. Unbearable cramps in legs, arms, stomach. And then the color change. The body lost so much fluid that the skin turned blue. Eyes sank into their sockets. Lips turned purple. People died of dehydration, withering away before their own eyes. September 1st morning, 70 people ill. September 1st evening, first deaths. September 2nd midnight, 127 dead. 3 days. 127 lives. And no one understood what was happening. Within a week, Broad Street had become a ghost town. 75% of the neighborhood fled, to relatives, to villages, to anywhere. They just wanted to be far away. So who stayed behind? Those with nowhere to go, elderly with no one else to turn to, patients too sick to leave their beds, and families too exhausted to bury their dead. At night, the only sound was the creaking of funeral carts, wheels turning on cobblestones, horses' hooves beating in rhythm, and each night, those carts returned more crowded. Coffin makers worked day and night, but they couldn't keep up. So what were the authorities doing? Nothing, because they were still afraid of the air. What passed for medicine in 1854 would make us laugh today. Back then, it killed people. Doctors visited patients while sniffing lavender. Why? Because disease came from bad air, remember? If you smelled something pleasant, the bad air couldn't reach you. Logical, right? Of course not. The recommended treatments were even more absurd. Brandy. It strengthens the body. Opium. It relieves the pain. Hot baths. It expels the poison through sweat. None of it worked. People continued dying even after these treatments. Officials held meeting after meeting. The conclusion: this is an airborne epidemic. There's nothing to be done. We must wait for the wind to change direction. And meanwhile, people kept drawing water from the same pump. No one could see the truth. No one, except one man. John Snow, 41 years old. Medium height. A quiet man. Not particularly flashy. Not wealthy. Not famous. But he had one quality. He never stopped asking questions. Snow was actually an anesthesia specialist. He had even administered chloroform to Queen Victoria during childbirth. He was known even at the palace, but his true passion lay elsewhere. Cholera. In 1848, another cholera outbreak had struck London. Snow had studied that epidemic, and he had noticed something. The disease didn't spread from foul-smelling places. It spread from specific water sources. His hypothesis was simple. What if the disease isn't in the air but in the water? When he said this, everyone laughed. Nonsense, they said. We've known for centuries that disease comes from the air. Aren't you just an anesthetist? Is epidemic disease even your field? They thought Snow was crazy. But he didn't give up, because he knew people were dying. And this time, he would prove it. As soon as Snow heard about the Broad Street outbreak, he sprang into action. But he didn't go sniffing lavender like other doctors. He grabbed his notebook, and he walked every street, every house, every door in Soho, one by one. He asked questions. Who died? When did they fall ill? What did they eat? What did they drink? Where did you get your water? A pattern began to emerge. The dead were always near the Broad Street pump. Snow drew a map. He marked every death, and the shape that emerged was a circle. At its center, the Broad Street pump. But couldn't this be coincidence? After all, the pump was in the center of the neighborhood. Anyone could die there. Snow needed more, and he found it. There was a brewery on Broad Street. More than 70 workers labored inside, and of these workers, not a single one had fallen ill. Why? Snow spoke with the factory owner. The answer was simple. I don't give my workers water. I give them beer. Beer is healthier after all. The man was probably joking, but unknowingly, he was telling the truth. The brewery workers weren't drinking Broad Street water, and they were alive. But Snow's most shocking evidence came from elsewhere. Hampstead, miles from Soho, a wealthy neighborhood. And a woman had died there. From cholera. This was impossible. The outbreak was in Soho. There wasn't a single case in Hampstead. How had this woman fallen ill? Snow visited the woman's family, and he asked one question. Where did your mother get her water? The answer made Snow leap from his seat. Our mother loved the water from her old neighborhood. Every week she had water brought from Broad Street. Bingo. The disease wasn't in the air. The disease was in the water. And that water came from the Broad Street pump. September 7th, 1854. Snow called for a meeting with St. James Parish officials. He had his map, he had his evidence, and he had a seemingly impossible request. Snow explained all his findings. He showed the map. He explained the brewery, the Hampstead woman, everything. And finally he said, "Remove the pump handle." The room fell silent. Then objections began. "This is nonsense. Disease comes from the air. You can't shut down a pump. People need water. Your evidence is just coincidence," Snow replied. "Perhaps you're right. Perhaps this is coincidence. But people are dying every day. And shutting down this pump will harm no one. If I'm wrong, you can reopen the pump. But if I'm right, how many more people will die?" The officials weren't convinced, but they were desperate. They had no other solutions. Finally, reluctantly, they agreed. "Fine, remove the pump handle." September 8th, 1854, early morning hours. Several workers approached the Broad Street pump. The wooden handle was removed from the pump. No one could draw water from this pump anymore, and not a single drop of water flowed. Days passed, and something happened. New cases began to decline. September 9th, 12 new cases. September 10th, 5 new cases. September 11th, 1 new case. The outbreak was over. But the price was heavy. 616 people had died. 616 mothers, fathers, children, siblings, all of them because they drank from the same pump. Snow had been right, but the story doesn't end here, because the medical world still didn't believe him. John Snow had solved the Broad Street outbreak. The evidence was plain to see, but no one listened. The medical world ignored Snow for years. Coincidence, they said. The outbreak was already ending, they said. It had nothing to do with removing the handle, they said. Snow didn't give up. He wrote books, published articles, gave lectures, but he never gained acceptance until 1858. That summer was one of the hottest in London's history, and the Thames River had become indescribable. They called it the Great Stink. The river was so polluted and had heated up so much that its stench engulfed all of London. Even Parliament couldn't convene. The officials who believed in miasma theory, ironically, were forced to act because of the smell in the air. Finally, the Great Sewer Project began. London's waste would no longer flow into the Thames but outside the city. But John Snow didn't live to see it. In 1858, at just 45 years old, he suffered a stroke and died, without ever fully seeing himself proven right. But Snow's legacy lived on. Years after Snow's death, science vindicated him. Louis Pasteur discovered microbes. Robert Koch isolated the cholera bacterium, and the medical world finally understood. Disease didn't come from the air. Disease came from germs, and germs could live in water. Snow's Broad Street map was recognized as history's first epidemiological map. Today we call him the father of modern epidemiology. When the COVID-19 pandemic struck the world in 2020, what did scientists do? They drew maps. They marked cases. They tried to find the source, just like John Snow did 166 years earlier. One man's persistence saves millions of lives today. So what does this story teach us? First lesson: clean water isn't a luxury, it's a right. Today, 2 billion people lack access to safe drinking water. More than 500,000 die from contaminated water every year. Not 1,854, 2,024. And people are still dying from the water they drink. Second lesson: wrong beliefs carry a heavy price. Miasma theory reigned for centuries, and it killed thousands. Today, there are still people who close their ears to science, who don't trust experts. John Snow was treated as a madman in his time, but he was right. The innocent always pay the price when science is rejected. Third lesson: the power of data visualization. Snow's map was one of history's first data visualization examples. It made a complex outbreak understandable with a single image. The graphs, maps, and infographics we use every day are all descendants of that old London map. If you visit London's Soho neighborhood today, you'll find Broadwick Street. Yes, the name changed. It's no longer Broad Street. And on the corner of the street, you'll see a small memorial, a replica of a pump without a handle. in memory of the pump that changed history in 1854. And right next door, there's a pub. Its name, John Snow. People drink beer there. Ironic, isn't it? The beer drinkers survived, after all. Sometimes the greatest heroes are those who show the truth no one wants to see. John Snow fought alone. He was mocked, excluded, ignored, but he never gave up, because he knew a drop of water can give life, or it can bring death. The difference lies in who's watching.